This is my 1975 Chevy C10 pickup with a 5.3 LS, 4L60, Holley Terminator, and vintage air. I'm going to do a quick rundown of the build for you guys because this is one of the best budget LS swaps you could possibly do. It's one of the best ones I've seen. I did it myself. I'm proud of it. And I thought I'd offer you some tips and tricks on things that I did, things that maybe you can do yourself. It's not the cheapest budget LS swap, but I think it's the best. As you can tell, it's a super clean install, which when you pop the hood makes all the difference in the world. I've been working on this truck for a couple of years now. It's gone through a few different renditions, but it's been fully rewired, LS swapped, 4L60, new driveline, full stainless TIG welded exhaust, eBay headers, Holley Terminator, vintage air, and a host of other stuff that really makes this thing the best driver. It's the Sunday cruiser. It's a commuter. I drive it every day, and I'm going to give you a rundown of all the stuff I did, little tips and tricks to help you complete yours. So like I said, this is a 5.3 out of a 99 GMC Sierra pickup. It's got a water pump from a 2010 and up Camaro, which has truck spacing. The only requirement for that is an ITC billet idler relocation kit. It's got the truck alternator, it's got truck power steering, and it has Holley low mount AC compressor bracket. The Holley low mount AC compressor bracket works with all different configurations, whether it's short, middle, or long. So I have it set up for the long setup right now. I've got eBay headers, eBay stainless headers. I paid about 200 bucks for them. I've got the truck intake manifold, drive-by cable throttle body. I put some bigger injectors in there, but you don't need to. I've got the EGR delete. I've got a Crower cam in it with beehive springs, the yellow LS3 beehive springs. It's backed by a 4L60, a built 4L60 with stock converter. I've got the vintage air in it, which I've adapted with a SD7 compressor. It's got the Derale dual fan pack that I bolted up to the stock radiator. The whole truck's been rewired with the American Autowire Classic Update Kit. That's a fully customizable. It comes with all the factory connectors, but it comes unterminated, which means you have to make all the connections yourself, from headlights to wiper motors to tail lights. Everything under the dash comes pre-terminated, but it's still quite a bit of wiring. As you can see, I've got my steam port drilled and tapped into the back of the water pump. That makes for a clean install and really helps when the radiator does not have a provision for the steam port. I've got your pretty basic ICT billet motor mount adapter plates to the factory motor mounts for the truck. I got new ones. They're nice. They're rubber. It feels really good. Here you can see I've got my GM fuel line adapters. These I got off of eBay. They're they adapt quick disconnect to -6AN, and then I'm just running Continental fuel injection hose from there back to the tank. I'm running the Holley Terminator with the internal map sensor, which I tapped into right here, and I've just got that running back to the computer itself. I like using one-piece radiator hoses whenever I can, which means that a lot of times you have to go to the auto parts store and ask them if you can go in the back and just guess, eyeball, measure, see if you can find a hose that fits. I was able to flare the stock hose that came with the 5.3 to fit into my stock steering box. So this hose is actually from the engine itself. The return line is right under the frame rail right here. It comes from the power steering cooler. You'll see I got my cooling fan relays down there. I run 3 relays, that way I can have a low and high speed on both fans at the same time, as well as AC. This engine's been torn down to a short block. When I got it, it had blown head gaskets and broken exhaust manifold studs and covered in 200,000 miles of grease. I'll put a link down in the description to the videos I have of fixing and kind of rebuilding. I did cam bearings when I did the cam. I put new lifters in it. I put new valve springs, new valve guide seals. So I'll put a link to the description. I'll put a link in the description down below to the sort of series I made on rebuilding this engine, making it whole again. Obviously, custom intake. This is aluminum that I welded. Not everybody can weld. I believe there's companies out there that make plastic ones that you can cut and put hose clamps, and I think it's made by Air Raid or something, or maybe K&N. Here's my vintage air unit. Nice clean install. I've got my Holley Terminator mounted up in there. You can't really see it, but mounted up under the dash. Comes through a firewall right here. One of the things that separates a good build is the wiring. This kit's about $700, and installing it cleanly doesn't cost you anything. One thing that really will set your build apart is cleanliness. You can tell that obviously I haven't pressure washed this engine bay, I haven't painted anything, but you don't see any wires. They're hidden, and they're hidden well, and it makes all the difference in the world when you pop the hood. Routing, sheathing, finding a good place for a fuse panel, planning, and execution. If there's one thing that you should spend the most time on, one place you should spend most of your time on is wiring. It doesn't take any skill to drop this engine in here and bolt on some headers. But when you pop the hood and you don't see any wiring, or let me say this, oftentimes you'll pop the hood and it'll be a nice engine with nice parts and sitting where it should, but you got wires everywhere. So I'm gonna get you up underneath this thing and show you some of the underpinnings of the build and how I completed the swap. And if you like what you see so far, snag yourself a shirt. It's on the website. So one of the first things I did was got a fuel tank from an 87 R10. It's the same as a C10, they just called it an R10 in 87. They were throttle body fuel injected, so this has a fuel pump and sending unit as part of one drop-in deal, and I put a Aeromotive 340 pump in there with it. Got my fuel lines here and little Russell wire screen fuel filter. Next thing I had to do was put this transmission cross member in here. The stock cross member probably would have worked. I've got a bunch of holes in the frame and I probably could have made it work, but it just wouldn't have worked well with the exhaust. I had another version of this in here and I had to build these crazy sort of exhaust tubes that went up and over, and this is a much cleaner setup. It was about 75 bucks, so it was worth it for me. I did have to modify it a little bit. I had to make it a little bit wider, about an inch wider, and since I had cut this part off, I just bolted it in there, lined it up, and got it set where I wanted to. I got a Camaro F-body oil pan. You don't have to use these. I just had one here. I did get a lot of crate engines, and this is a takeoff. So you can see that it's got adequate ground clearance, and with those engine mounts, it's got adequate clearance to the K-member. And it bolts up to the transmission, which is nice. I got a little bit of an oil leak. Transmission cooler lines. I always drill and tap this, put a clamp here, keep them away from everything. Another shot of my engine mounts. These are eBay headers that I had to modify. I cut the bottom side of the runners of each runner and I had to fold it in this way. It was very close to the frame rail over here. Since I was modifying it, I cut this and made it a little bit straighter, a little bit longer. You can get nice headers from Holley for just a little bit more than I paid for these, which will probably fit better, but they're not stainless. Got a 4-inch one-piece driveline. It's nice, vibration free. Hold plenty of power. I always put this heat wrap over my fuel lines. I always run my fuel lines up over the transmission so that they come out behind the engine, so you don't run them up over the firewall and clamp them into the firewall. Obviously we got this nice custom TIG welded stainless exhaust system. Not everybody's going to be able to do this, but it's certainly not necessary. I just have the ability and the desire to do it. It cost me about 350 bucks in tubing, probably about 75 bucks for these eBay mufflers, and probably honestly 200 bucks in V-bands. But I like the way it looks. I love the way it sounds. It's really something that you can be proud of when this thing gets put up on a lift, you know. Haven't done anything in the rear. It's got 308 gears in it with overdrive, which means I'm doing 80 miles an hour at 1900, 2000 RPM. I am gonna have this wheel seal replaced because I don't feel like doing it. So, or this axle seal. Get this diff cover cleaned up, do that axle seal, and this will all be good to go. Up front on the truck anyway, I've done energy suspension control arm bushings, top and bottom, and then Moog ball joints all around. I have fixed these upper shock mounts, how they always waller out. Take a nice piece of 3/16 steel, hole saw it, then drill the hole out in the middle, weld it to the frame, call it a day. I did shim up the transmission just a little bit with these little aluminum shims. I was also able to reuse the stock shift linkage. I just made a minor adjustment on this piece here. I can't actually get first gear, but I can get everything else, and it lines up on the indicator real nice, and in the interest of saving money, I don't need first gear. Here's another shot of that low mount AC compressor and this bracket here where I put my trans cooler lines. There's the power steering return hose underneath the frame rail there. That's gonna do it. I think I covered everything I could. If you have any questions, leave them down there in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions or let you know how I did things or how much things cost. I think all said and done, the engine was $1,000, Terminator was $1,500, transmission was free, driveline was $500, exhaust parts $700, miscellaneous probably $1,500. I'll see if I can do some quick math, figure out what I spent. I wouldn't be surprised if I got $5 grand into this swap. Like I said, it's not the cheapest budget build, but I think it's the best. I put money where it mattered to me, and the end result is something that I'm proud of. I drive it every day, and it looks great. And it looks like it's supposed to be there. It looks like this truck is a 2002 Silverado under the hood. So, let me know if you guys have any questions. Merch is on the website, mechanicaladventures.com. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I got a bunch more content coming, and any help I can be, any questions I can answer, please let me know. Anything you don't like, well, that's your problem. We'll see you on the next one, boys.